Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving into a literal linguistic mystery, and it's one that's been hiding in plain sight inside one of the most famous historical texts on the planet. It's a riddle of ancient words, really. And getting to the bottom of it, well, it completely redefines how we look at human existence. So let's get right into it. Take a look at Genesis 1:26. This is a massive foundational statement for ancient theology and honestly all of Western philosophy. It says, "And God said, 'Let us make man in our image, after our likeness.'" Now, if you're paying really close attention, you might catch what looks like a bit of redundancy there. Notice that? In our image and after our likeness. Okay, let's dive into this. Why on earth use two words for the exact same thing? Well, it turns out this isn't just some ancient repetition or, a lack of vocabulary. It's actually a brilliant detective puzzle. When we start digging into the original Hebrew, the literary style, and the cultural context, a super nuanced and absolutely fascinating picture emerges. The short answer, these two words, they definitely overlap, but they are doing two totally distinct jobs. So let's start with that first word. The original Hebrew word for image is tselem. Literally, it refers to something that represents something else. In other parts of these ancient texts, it's actually translated as a carved image, a statue, or even a king's official seal. But here is the absolute key to understanding this. The word does not mean the object is perfectly identical to what it represents. I mean, think about a statue of Abraham Lincoln. We all know the marble isn't actually Lincoln, right? It's not going to just suddenly wake up and start giving the Gettysburg Address. But it officially represents him. It points directly back to him. Right. Now pair that with the second word, likeness. This translates from the Hebrew word demuth. And this word, it means similarity, a resemblance, or a pattern. Just to give you an example, the prophet Ezekiel uses this exact word to describe the likeness of four living creatures, or the likeness of a throne. It really emphasizes a visual or a conceptual similarity. It resembles the original thing, even if it isn't completely 100% identical. So when we put these two concepts side by side, we get this brilliant synthesis. It's a crucial distinction that really shapes human identity at its core. Image, well, that speaks primarily to representation. It's all about your function. Likeness, on the other hand, speaks primarily to resemblance. It's about your actual nature. To put it simply, you represent the creator and you resemble the creator. Now, what's really interesting about this concept is the historical context. I want you to transport yourself all the way back to the ancient Near East. Think about it. Human kings couldn't literally be everywhere at once, right? So to solve this, they would erect these massive, towering stone statues of themselves all throughout their territories. Those statues were basically a silent, imposing declaration that said, hey, this territory belongs to this king. The statue officially represented the king's authority. And it was the exact same deal with pagan temples back then. They were packed with images of their gods to symbolize that deity's presence and rule over the area. Which brings us to a massive, truly revolutionary twist in the Genesis narrative. Think about it. If ancient kings and ancient religions put literal stone idols in their temples and their lands to represent their rule, what exactly does the Creator do in the territory of Earth? Are you ready for the grand reveal? God doesn't place some silent, cold piece of stone in creation. No, he places living, breathing human beings. Humanity itself becomes the authorized living image of the king. But wait, hang on. This raises a kind of funny but very common question. Does being made in God's likeness mean we physically look like him? Like, does God have two arms, two legs, maybe a face? Well, no. As the text in John 4:24 clearly states, God is spirit. The Creator has no physical body in his divine nature. Whenever the ancient texts talk about God's hands or God's eyes, it's just using anthropomorphic language, putting things into human terms so our finite little minds can actually grasp it. So, if we don't look like God physically, how exactly do we resemble him? Well, we resemble the Creator internally, in our actual nature. There are 7 key attributes of this resemblance, and it's totally worth taking a minute to really process what each of these means for us. First up, rational thought. We aren't just driven by basic, animalistic instincts. We have this incredible capacity for complex planning, abstract logic, and deep contemplation. Just as God designs and plans, humans invent and build. Second is moral capacity. We humans uniquely wrestle with concepts of justice and fairness. We don't just operate on the survival of the fittest, we deeply, instinctively feel that some things are objectively right and some are wrong. Third, creativity. Sure, we don't create matter out of thin air, but we take the raw materials of the universe and we arrange them into breathtaking art, intricate music, and mind-blowing science. Fourth, relationship. The ancient text actually hints at this right from the very start when it says, "Let us make man in our image." It shows this divine plurality and a deep, inherent need for communion and community among us. Fifth is dominion. We are uniquely entrusted with the role to rule and care for the earth. Sixth is the capacity for love, and specifically, sacrificial love. I mean, the sheer ability to put another person's needs way above our own survival. And finally, number 7, freedom of choice. We actually possess meaningful moral agency. We aren't just biological robots just running a script. We literally get to choose our path. And honestly, this brilliantly highlights a striking literary progression in the text itself. If you read through Genesis 1, God creates the plants, the fish, the birds, the animals, and over again, the text just keeps repeating that they reproduce after its kind. But then all of a sudden, that pattern completely shatters. Humanity is not just created after their kind. Humanity is created after our likeness. It's such a fascinating literary shift, and it completely sets humanity apart as the absolute climax of creation. Every single other creature reflects its own kind, but humanity, we uniquely bear this profound moral and rational character. Stepping back into our everyday reality for a second, this brings some serious, profound weight to that fifth attribute we just talked about, dominion. It is absolutely vital to compare being owners of creation with being stewards under God. You see, being made in God's image is directly tied to ruling creation under his authority. We are essentially vice-regents. We're administering a kingdom that, frankly, we don't even own, and that completely reframes how we view the earth around us. Abusing creation or just exploiting it recklessly, that isn't just a matter of bad environmentalism. It is a literal direct dishonor to the king whose territory we are supposed to be stewarding. So the crucial point is, what happens when we fail? When human flaw, corruption, and all that sin inevitably enter the picture, is that divine image just, poof, erased? That's actually a super common assumption. But here's the thing, the text never actually says that. Just look at Genesis 9:6. This is spoken way after the tragic narrative of the fall and the whole flood. It says, "For in the image of God made he man." The image was damaged? Absolutely. Distorted? Without a doubt. But destroyed? No, not at all. A really, truly helpful way to visualize this kind of abstract concept is to just think of humanity as a mirror. Our entire identity is to exist within the sphere of God's representation. We were perfectly designed to reflect his glory out into the world, literally just like a mirror reflects sunlight. Human flaw and sin, they don't shatter the mirror into a million unfixable pieces, and they definitely don't create a totally different mirror altogether. No, sin just clouds the glass. It grinds it all up, so the reflection we end up casting is terribly, terribly distorted. Let's see how this builds across the whole overarching theological narrative, because a genuinely beautiful progression emerges here. Step 1, in creation, the pure image is given. Step 2, in the fall, that exact image is damaged and clouded, but crucially, it completely retains its inherent dignity. Step 3, enter Christ, who the New Testament literally calls the perfect image, succeeding perfectly exactly where Adam failed. And that leads us straight to step 4, salvation, where that clouded image is actively and purposefully being restored. And that perfectly sets up the New Testament's radical claim in Colossians 1:15, stating that Jesus is the image of the invisible God. When you look at it from this perspective, salvation isn't just some cold legal transaction. It isn't just the mere forgiveness of past wrongs. No, it is a massive, epic restoration project. The ultimate goal is to renew the image that was damaged. The gospel is basically framed as the ultimate cleaning of that clouded mirror, restoring humanity to exactly what it was always intended to be in the first place. So you might be wondering, why does all this ancient linguistic analysis actually matter to you today? Well, because every single day we instinctively ask ourselves these huge questions. Who am I? What gives my life value? And we so often try to find those answers in our bank accounts, our job titles, our relationships, or even, our social media likes. But this ancient text, it answers those deep, fundamental questions before it tells us a single thing about our achievements or our failures. Your worth does not begin with what you accomplish. It begins with whose image you bear. And that really brings us to a final provocative thought for today. It's one thing to apply all of this to yourself, right? To realize your own inherent dignity and worth. But think for a second about the people around you, the people you love, the strangers you just pass by on the street, and yes, even your worst enemies. If every single person you meet is a marred, clouded, but entirely living reflection of the creator of the universe, How does that change how you treat them today? To truly honor people, regardless of their status, their health, or their background, is to fundamentally honor the God whose image they still bear. Keep that in mind as you go about your day. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring.